Right, so I quit my job about 2 months ago, and in the 2 months since then, I've earned about $70,000 in my business, in top line sales, revenue, whatever. And in this video, I just want to talk about the things that have happened since then, what I've done, how I've actually done that. And then I'm going to talk about the key lessons that I have learned that I think will be broad lessons for people to apply to their own situations. Maybe you've heard them before, but hearing them from me might make a difference. All these kind of business and life lessons are broadly fit into the same kind of categories, but there's no such thing as a unique message, only unique messengers. So that's why I'm making this video. But before I get into that, I want to talk about 3 quick thoughts and caveats to all of this, just because I think they're really important to share. So the first one is that over the past 5 years, I've watched so many of these kind of videos where people are talking about how much money they've made online and how they've grown their business online and all that kind of stuff. I have gotten a lot of value out of them. Sometimes they're too much and they kind of, make me feel bad. And I think it's really important, if this is going to make you feel bad or make you, not feel great, then you shouldn't watch it. But in general, I've watched loads of these videos where people talk about building their online business or just building their business. And I've got such an insane amount of value and mainly inspiration to try and go do something similar myself. So I'm really making this video to kind of pass back that value that I gained to people who are maybe further behind me in the journey and all that kind of stuff, but also to kind of document the journey myself. The second thing to mention is the $70,000 is in dollars and it's top line sales. So I'm in the UK and I earn in pounds. So after the expenses, costs, tax, converting it into pounds, it might be like £30,000. So the number is actually smaller than in reality that I actually get in my pocket at the end of the day, and then you have to pay personal tax, all that kind of stuff. And I know people know that, but I think it's really important to highlight the fact that the big numbers aren't always the real numbers. And then the third thing to mention is that January and February this year, the last 2 months where I've earned this money, has mainly been launch months where I've kind of launched new stuff and I've been selling quite a lot. But now in the next couple months, I've got to kind of deliver on a lot of that stuff that I have been selling and work with the people who have amazingly put their faith in me to help them. And so I probably won't make that much money in the next couple months because I won't really be selling anything, and I'll mainly just be delivering on the things that I've sold in the past couple months. Right, so we've got the caveats out of the way and I've closed the curtains a little bit so the room is a bit darker because it was getting a bit too bright. Now we can get into it. So what's actually happened in the last 2 months? Well, when I started the year in January, kind of sat down at my desk and I had the whole year ahead of me and I was thinking about what to do. The first thing that I knew I should do is relaunch my course, Thumbnail Masterclass. So last year I made this course, hopefully, obviously, about helping YouTubers make better thumbnails. I launched it in October and then closed it down and got a bunch of feedback and made some improvements to the course and relaunched it in January to my email list, which has loads of YouTubers on it. You can sign up to that with the link in the description if you are a YouTuber. If you're not a YouTuber and you're just a random person, don't sign up to the list because it's going to be about YouTube. Anyway, I launched the course again in January and that made about $11,000 from the relaunch. And then the other thing I did in January was that I started working with 2 people one-to-one. 2 advanced YouTubers. They had audiences, but they kind of wanted to work on growing the channel and growing the business in particular. So I was really interested in helping them do that. So I started working one-to-one with 2 YouTubers who were also on my email list that I found through there. And I offered them, I think, a really good deal. And that total came to about $12,500. So the total there for January was around about $24,000 with some AdSense thrown in there from a viral video that I posted last month about quitting my job. So it's a nice fun circle. You talk about quitting your job, you make some money, and then you can make another video about making money about quitting your job and all that kind of stuff. Obviously that's kind of a joke. You actually have to have a business where you help people as well, rather than just talking about your life. And this YouTube channel this isn't the business. This is where I document learnings and reach new people. So then in February, I had this kind of question on my hands of what next. And one thing that I had tested out in January as well, alongside relaunching the course, was paid ads for the course. And so I started paying Facebook to advertise my course. Maybe some of you saw my ads. I basically made a bunch of ads and they looked really good. And I started getting Facebook to send them everywhere and having a daily budget of $50, $100, $150, all that kind of thing. And basically broke even with it. I lost a little bit of money, which is pretty much the same story that you hear from most people who try Facebook ads. And I kind of knew that, but I really wanted to learn about it. I was really, really curious to learn about it. But then after a couple of weeks, my energy was just going elsewhere and I wanted to help people more directly, and it just didn't feel like quite the right thing. I think there's still loads of opportunity there I could do in the future, or could pursue in the future, but my energy kind of started to lean towards this whole group coaching program thing where I help YouTubers who've already got an audience build the business side of their YouTube channel. Basically, a couple weeks ago, I was like, maybe I should just test it out. And I just make an application form, see if people are interested. And I just shared it in my newsletter. I got a whole load of applications. I called the program the $100,000 YouTuber, and that's still what it's called. I think it's a fun name. It kind of accurately describes what the program is about. And so I just made this form. And a bunch of people applied. Then I was just like, well, I guess the next stage is to talk to these people and see if they want to join the program. The first person I spoke to, I didn't even have a sales page or anything. I just spoke to them. And then I was like, I think I need a page to describe what I'm talking about here. So I then kind of made a page and hopped on about 25 sales calls with loads of people who had applied who I thought would be a good fit for the program. And a bunch of them joined. That is basically the main source of revenue for February, the last couple of weeks. And so now my job is to help them get results over the next couple months. It's a 6-month program. I'm going to be very committed to working with them, showing up every week, helping them get results and kind of delivering all that kind of stuff. That's why I might not be, making as much money over the next couple months, but it's an experiment. And I think that's what business is really all about, is trying stuff, seeing what you get kind of interest for and traction with, and then running with it. And then if you want to do it again or kind of continue with it, you keep going. And if you want to cut it, then you cut it. And I think this is going to be something that is really fun, I continue to do for a long time, because it's just really cool. It's just really cool helping these amazing people out there who are educating the world with their special area of expertise, and help them do that in a sustainable way where they can build a 6-figure business out of their YouTube channel so that they can continue to educate for free on YouTube. And then they have, some paid products where they help people even more. And the total sales for this program have come to over $40,000, which is crazy. And then throw in a few more sales of my thumbnail course as well. And that brings the total for January, February about $70,000 in top line sales. So really crazy. Don't really know what to think about the whole thing, but I'm here. And the main thing now for me to focus on, my next bottleneck, is really just making the product good and making this program really, really good and working with these people who are super awesome. So that's kind of the main focus now. But in terms of getting to this point, there are some really kind of key lessons, I think, that have helped me get here. And I think the first one in particular is by far the most important. So let's start with that. Okay, so the first lesson, by far the most important lesson in this whole video, is the Entrepreneur Apprenticeship. And that is a name I got from Daniel Priestley, or that Daniel Priestley came up with. Daniel Priestley is like a serial entrepreneur, epic businessman. I love pretty much every single thing that he says and read all his books and all that kind of thing. And he's really cool. And he has this idea called the Entrepreneur Apprentice. To explain this, I'm just going to read something that Daniel Priestley wrote about it. So he said, "If you're at all confused about starting a business, I recommend doing a year as a direct report to an entrepreneur. You'll learn, you'll earn, and you'll build confidence. I've had a dozen of my ex-employees go off and start 7-figure businesses. These people worked closely with me for several years and felt ready to do their own thing. Only 7% of businesses hit $1 million, and almost all of my previous reports have achieved it. Being an apprentice to an entrepreneur is part of the entrepreneur journey." So I think I first heard that whilst I was already working for Ali. So I got very lucky because I just kind of watched Ali's videos 5 years ago, and then over time eventually ended up working for him. Yeah, in case you don't know, the guy I worked for was Ali Abdal, a YouTuber, entrepreneur type person, and I worked for him for 2.5 years. And the value in just every area of that job is the number one reason why I was able to have a good start to my entrepreneurial life, is because I learned so much whilst I was working there about making money, about running a business, about running a team, about how to approach all of these kind of things, about the right mindset that you need, about mental gymnastics that you have to go through as an entrepreneur to actually make money and to convince yourself to do things and to get over fear and all of that kind of stuff. I just wouldn't have had the same kind of experience I have now if I hadn't had that job. So I kind of did this entrepreneur apprenticeship and without realizing. And when Daniel mentioned it, I heard Daniel mention it for the first time, it just kind of blew my mind apart. And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm doing. This is super fun. Maybe I'll work here for a long time, but maybe if I do want to go start my business, this is also providing me with a lot of education and stuff. So a really, really valuable lesson. If you're someone who wants to start a business one day, I think working in a small business of less than 15 people, basically, where you get to work really closely with the owner, with the founder of the business, is such an important step to running your own business really well. Some people don't need it, but if you're like me and you had no idea how to run a business, you knew nothing about entrepreneurship, and you didn't even know that you wanted to start a business, then it's a really good option. It's working in a small business, in particular one that is, functioning well and has a kind of key person of influence running it. And that's a term Daniel uses, is key person of influence, someone who's basically got a good personal brand and is running the business well. And this could be in any industry. It could be if you want to work in a restaurant or run a restaurant one day, a very sensible thing to do would be to go work for 2 years in a restaurant in a good restaurant run by someone with a personal brand of some kind. There's that famous chef Yotam Ottolenghi, and he has like an understudy. I can't remember what she's called, but she wrote a book called Mezcla, and I made a recipe of hers from the other day. And she has kind of like, is that right? That's crazy. Okay, yeah, I've just checked out who the author of that cookbook is. She's called Ixta Belfrage, I think is how you say her name. And she worked with Yotam Ottolenghi for 5 years, and now she's a successful chef of her own. Then the other thing is that you also build up credibility. So when you try to then kind of pitch your services to other people, you can fall back on the experience that you've had working in that job as well. So in my industry, Ali has a lot of credibility in the YouTube world, because he has 6 million subscribers. It makes a big difference to my ability to, convince people to work with me, to sell my services. And so that is very helpful. That's by far the biggest factor in why I've been able to do what I've done in the last 2 months. Okay, moving on. The second lesson is you don't have to know where you're going to get started. So over 3 years ago now, I made a video on my YouTube channel, the 6th video that I posted on my YouTube channel, called Start, Keep Going, Learn, Keep Going. In that video, I talk about this concept of getting started before you figure out anything else. About how, like, the reason I started my YouTube channel was because I convinced myself that I would figure everything out once I'd started. Instead of trying to get all the gear before I started my channel, figure out what videos I was going to make, really overthink my strategy, all that kind of stuff. I was like, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to start. Then I'll learn. Then I'll keep going. And I had this phrase just ringing around my head: start, then learn. And then also the idea that you didn't have to know where you're going to get started. When I started this year, I didn't really know what I was doing or where I was going. I had some ideas, but I still don't really know where I'm going. And you don't have to know. You just don't have to know where you're going. You just have to make the next step. It's all about just putting one foot in front of the other. And then that's such a cliche, but it is so true. And it's all anyone is really doing. Some people come up with these like grand plans, these like 6-month plans, year-long plans, 10-year plans, but you just don't know what's going to happen. And so all you can do is put the next foot in front of the other one on the given day. And that idea of not having to know where you're going to get started just massively freed me up. It freed me up to start my YouTube channel over 3 years ago. It freed me up to quit my job, freed me up to get the job with Ali. It freed me up to quit again, start my business. Everything just comes downstream of being okay with this idea of not knowing where you're going and not having it all figured out, but just taking the next step and taking the next kind of step that feels most obvious to you, and trusting your gut and all that kind of stuff. Kind of generic, but it just really is like a really big thing that I think about on a day-to-day basis. The third lesson is something that's been a really big part of my journey, which is finding other people to go on the journey with. And this has just made such a big difference to how much fun I'm having and my motivation levels, and the level of fear that I feel is surrounding myself with other people who are doing similar things to me, or just who have the same kind of mindset and approach to life. And I think working in Ali's business the last couple years put me in contact with so many of those kinds of people, and in particular a guy called Saf, who is now a very good friend of mine, and we met about 2 years ago in Ali's team. Now we've both left, and I go to WeWork every week with Saf whilst we both work on our businesses. And without Saf, I would feel a lot more kind of alone, stressed. I think the fact that we're both in London, we can go to WeWork, we can work on our businesses, and it's just really fun. He actually left the business before me, and he kind of paved the path, the entrepreneurial path, and made it a lot easier for me to kind of make the leap and step into the fear and all that kind of stuff. And I knew that he'd be there waiting for me, so once I left, I could then join him every day. And we were already going to WeWork together because we were a remote team, so it didn't make a difference when Saf left the business, but it made a big difference that knowing that I was going to have him kind of each week to talk to about everything that I was doing and everything I was going through and the stresses and all that kind of stuff. So finding other people to go on the journey with is like a really valuable lesson. Okay, the fourth thing is that fear is your greatest enemy. At least it is for me. I think fear is the number one thing that like holds me back, is just being scared of the future, of what might happen, of what might go wrong, of all the things that people might think about me, of all the judgment. A big lesson for me in this area has been, when you make fear known, you rob its power over you. And that's a quote from Corey Wilkes, who's like a psychologist and specifically helps like creators and YouTubers and stuff. And Corey said this, I heard him say this once, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to make fear known. So I need to make all the things I'm scared of, like really articulate them, write them down, try to understand them and understand why I'm scared of them. And when you do that, you rob fear of its power over you, because fear is this like, for so many people, and still me, it holds you down. It really like keeps you to the floor, and it doesn't let you realize what you're capable of, or what you might want to do with your life, or all your interests that you have. It just kind of restrains you and constricts you. And I think understanding fear and the things that you're scared of and why you're scared of them is a really, really helpful psychological kind of exercise to sort of explore. You just often realize that things are worse in your mind than they are in reality. And there's that whole quote from Seneca or Epictetus, whoever it is, that you suffer more in imagination than you do in reality. And I think that is really, really true, especially with entrepreneurship, is you worry about a lot of the things that will go wrong. And actually the best thing that you can do is just make it a quick decision and move forwards. And that actually brings me on to the next lesson, which is macro patience, micro speed. So basically, in the big picture, be patient. Things take time. Growing a business takes time. You need to learn stuff. You need to gain experience. You need to figure out how to do things. It takes a long time to build something great, and you have lots of time in your life to achieve things and all that kind of stuff, or do the things you want to do. So in the big picture, be patient. Things will come if you kind of work hard at them, all that kind of stuff. But then in the micro, be really impatient, move really fast, and the day-to-day, make decisions quickly, and remember that kind of speed is a virtue. So this is something I've really thought about this year, is making decisions fast and moving with speed in the day-to-day. In the big picture, I'm trying to remember that, it's going to take years to build a business, and that I just need to enjoy the journey, and that the good things will come, and just not stress out. And I'm kind of already living an amazing life. I don't need to really stress out about anything. But when it comes to the day-to-day, and I'm actually sitting at my desk here thinking about what I'm going to do, I try to move fast. Be reasonably impatient about the things that I want to get done. Do them well, and do the right thing. The one thing that you should never sacrifice is your reputation. So whatever you're doing, never ever make a decision that comes at the cost of your reputation with just anyone, but especially your customers. So the number one thing that I'm trying to focus on and remember at the moment is just to really look after the people that I work with, provide an amazing service, and make them happy, get results, and all that kind of stuff. Because bad reputation spreads. You should never make a decision that comes at the cost of that. You just want to look after that side of things. But in general, macro patience, micro speed is like a really useful thing to think about. The next lesson is a sort of productivity related lesson. And this is something I didn't actually learn from my former employer, productivity guru Ali Abdaal. A lesson I learned from Brendan Burchard, who is another productivity guru that I absolutely love. And he had this lesson, done by one, which means that there's all these books and like productivity people who talk about this idea of one big thing a day. So figure out what the one thing is that you need to do that day and write it down and then do it. But then Brendan just changed it to done by one, i.e. done by 1 p.m. And he said that there are very few industries that he's come across where you can't win it by 1 p.m. I was like, that is so good. So now every day I just think about what is the one big thing I need to do by 1 p.m. Sometimes it's one big task. Sometimes it's a bunch of smaller tasks that kind of fall into one category. And I just sit down and ask myself, what is the one big thing I need to work on this morning? Because the morning is just such a good time for productivity and creativity and getting shit done. And at least it is for me. It's where I'm most productive. And so every day, just at the top of my to-do list, it says done by one, and I just write down what is the one thing. And that just removes all the noise. Having the 1 p.m. thing just means that there's that extra level of urgency, because I used to write the one thing down, and because I knew I had the whole day to do it, it just didn't feel the same. This has just been a good unlock for me in the personal day-to-day productivity side of things. And that rounds us off for this video. If you want to follow along my personal journey, then subscribe to my personal newsletter, the Sunday Night Review, link down below. I sort of share a weekly email where I talk about what I've been up to that week and all the things I'm learning in my life and business. And then if you're a YouTuber and you want YouTube help, sign up to that newsletter in the link in the description as well. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.